The Bournes, Mr. and Mrs. Bourne, in 1915. They finished in 1917. He had predominantly made his money through his family's gold mine, the Empire Mine in Grass Valley, but he was also very involved with gas and water. And we're sitting on land that's surrounded, for the most part, by Spring Valley Water Company, today San Francisco Water Company. That was entirely held by Mr. Bourne at the time that he purchased this property and built Filoli. So he guaranteed that he would always have this view, that the watershed would always be protected. And like all of his other homes, his homes always abutted one of his businesses. So here he knew that this little piece of his retirement, he thought he would grow young here. This, they built it when they were in their 60s, and it's tucked away from the road. It's quiet. It's supposed to be their English country estate. He was a Cambridge man and was always kind of seeking that return to England. And his wife and him built this beautiful home. It's about 50,000 square foot. It's a modified Georgian. They had San Francisco architect Wallace Polk design it for them. He had also designed a number of other properties for them. And then they spent the next 10 years really developing the gardens. And today we have 16 acres of formal gardens. They're English gardens. They're more formal than any garden you will find in England today, mainly because they're an 18th century English garden, and all of their gardens have been since retrofitted and are no longer this kind of pure to the time period. We then sit on 652 acres, which today is a protected nature preserve. You can do hiking with groups. A number of groups are heading off to hike today on guided hikes up into the redwoods and up into the gulch above us. But it's a beautiful spot. It has a strange name, as you might have guessed. We have people who try to tell us they went to school with the Filolis all the time. But it's a made-up word. It stands for Fight, Love, Live. And it was Mr. Bourne's personal motto. Fight for a just cause, love your fellow man, and live a good life. So it's Filoli. So we hope that today you'll enjoy your visit. And we're going to head over to the front of the house, work our way through, and you will get just jealous eyes from everyone as we head up the grand staircase. Well, as you can tell, even though it's tucked away and you can't do that kind of grand approach, and it's supposed to be kind of this subdued Tuscan column. Is supposed to be very country, very subdued. You do get this grand kind of front, even though he tried to make it tucked back from the road and very, muted. But we have that California twist up top with the tiled roof. That we also have French and Italian accents mixed in, so we call it a modified Georgian, but it's really a very eclectic style with just more Georgian than anything else. But as we come inside, you'll see the first floor is mainly 17.5 to 18.5 foot ceilings. Large rooms. After your library tour, one of our docents, Anne McCarthy, is going to be taking you on a house tour, so you'll get to see the downstairs before lunch. And then after lunch, you'll have an opportunity to tour the gardens. So we're just going to kind of jump through, but then you'll get a chance to visit later, I promise. But welcome, we're going to come to Sterling Library first. And this is our reference collection. It's non-circulating. It's usually available by appointment only. And it covers a wide range of topics from decorative arts, landscape design, architecture, botanical, illustration, as well as general plant information, and books related specifically to our permanent collection. So we have some subjects on painters and architects that are related to Filoli specifically. But come on in. Diane is able to answer far more detailed questions on this collection.
This room originally was used as the family sitting room, upstairs sitting room, by the Bourne family. And so these bookshelves obviously were not here at that time. This was the room where the family would gather for cocktails before dinner. And after Mr. Bourne became ill, he spent a great deal of time in this room. In fact, they at one time had a porch built out on that end so that he could look down the valley towards the Cushing Springs watershed. That's all grown up now, and you can't really see the view that he saw at that time, but it was his favorite place to be.
Was the watershed part of the county yet, or still wild land at that point?
Mr. Bourne owned the water company, so that land was part of his water company.
Not the city and county.
That was one reason when they were, part of that land that was on the, actually part of the water company, he had the crews make sure they kept it all trimmed down so you could see all the way to the watershed.
So as I'm sure you could all spot in a microsecond, our collections are organized by Library of Congress.
All right.
You need that for the depth of...
Right, as specific as it is, we need to use the Library of Congress.
It makes getting onto the Library and Collections Committee kind of challenging for some of our general volunteers, though, when one of the first questions is can you shelf my Library of Congress system? It's a little intimidating for non-library people.
We teach everybody we can about it, but we don't catch everybody.
So how long is this collection?
Right now it's available for any of our members. We have 9,000 members, and some of those are dual memberships, so the numbers can be even higher. It's also available for all of our staff, so there's 68 people on site. I most often have the horticulture staff in here in the late afternoon, early evenings. Especially we have a rotating intern program for the horticulture staff, so we usually have somewhere between 4 to 6 interns a year that come through that are preparing to do their masters or have just finished their masters in various horticulture related subjects, and they tend to live in here for at least a few weeks out of their 4-month internship. They spend a lot of time preparing and just loving the fact that they can come in here after working in the garden all day and hold down books and really delve into a subject, especially if they're continuing on in landscape architecture or a specific program. We usually have books that they just don't often have a chance to really utilize, especially every afternoon if they want for a few hours without any distractions.
Do you ever get general library interns, like from San Jose State or City College?
We haven't here. I have at other historic houses on the peninsula, and we're hoping to be able to start accessing a few interns. I started here with Filoli about 17 months ago, and so since I have everything under the one umbrella, I've been focused on the collections inventory. But the committee just finished inventorying this whole collection, as well as the next room we're going to see is our little rare book room. It's kind of our triage area right now for books that are awaiting conservation, as well as where we store some of our botanical art, Florilegia collection. So then we're hoping that once we kind of begin to get the house in order, that we'll have more workspace and time to focus on getting some interns in. Because I've utilized them before, and they're a great help. I had to do 3 for my master's program, so yeah. I know how important it can be. I just wanted to make sure that we had somewhere for them to work properly. So we've been updating computers all year and getting new equipment, and we've been busy.
Is it possible just for a member of the public to come in and read here?
Yeah, usually if they make a research appointment, then we're able to open it up. For kind of general repeated visitation, we encourage people to become a member, of course, but
Okay.
you know, then you can enjoy the garden and everything year round.
Non-circulating, I imagine.
Yeah, this room's non-circulating, but the Friends Library is a circulating collection. Well, you will have some time to peruse after we tour the 3 rooms. For anyone who wanted to linger a little bit, we do have some time for you to do that before the house tour. So come on to the next space. So this is a room that's not generally included even on our library appointments. This is the library office and workroom. But we figured since you're all librarians, you'd like to see where the actual work happens. This was originally one of the bedrooms. There's 9 bedrooms on this level, plus the sitting room that we were just in for family. And they generally had family on this side of the house. Visitors stayed across the hall on the east side. This was the Bourne's adult daughter, Maud. This was specified as her room whenever she was visiting home from Ireland. Her children had the rooms next door as a day and night nursery. And they would stay, you know, their nanny had rooms in the staff wing on the south end of the house where there's another 10 smaller bedrooms for staff. But this room is where the Library and Collections Committee works 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. And we have 7 computers in the department now. So we're usually at capacity on full work days with everybody coming in. But they catalog work. Everybody, unlike a lot of committees here at Filoli, there's actually 32 different committees of volunteers. We have more than 1,500 volunteers, more than all other National Trust sites combined. And last year, the 25 members of this committee worked 2,650 hours. So I really couldn't do this without them. And they do everything, but unlike a lot of the other committees, as I was saying, they don't, you know, the garden committee has about 100 people that go out and they weed. One section of the garden at a time. Occasionally they get to trim something or cut something or plant things, but a lot of it is just general upkeep and weeding. But everybody's doing the same thing. They have 25 ladies and, you know, the 2 gentlemen that do very different things, and everybody has their task. And we're in the process of making sure that everybody's procedures are written down. That whole hit by a bus binder, you know, for something when everybody's this specialized. Is a task that we're working on. But they do everything out of this room predominantly. So the other little room off to the side, you'll probably only want a few in at a time. This is kind of our rare book room. And as I said, this is where the triage books are kept that are needing repair. And as well, our Banks Florilegium, which are the botanical illustrations that were made from Captain Cook's voyage. We have the Banks and the Highgrove Florilegium collections. We're one of the only U.S. institutions to have both. So right now, the Highgrove is on display downstairs in the trophy room, but when it's off display, it's in here with the rest of the Florilegium. You'll see there's like 32, am I right, 32 or 35 boxes of all of the illustrations, and if we rotate them every 6 weeks, and if we did that for the next 19 years, we would be able to show each and every print on exhibit. So go ahead and take a peek through. You'll also see definite work in order, a few cabinets that say archives yet to be sorted. Unfortunately, our archives are still yet uncatalogued. It's another project that's waiting in the wings.
How many of your volunteers are librarians?
Right now, two that are retired librarians right now. Or one's currently working as a librarian, the other is retired.
Okay.
In the past, we've always had at least a few. We call them the real librarian. You know, when there's a strange question on how to process something or how something should be categorized. one of your members, Cynthia McCarthy, is just starting as a volunteer with us this month. She's going to help me scan and catalog the photography collection, which is also uncatalogued. So there's a few thousand photos that keeps it given for a few years. We haven't. We haven't traditionally. I mean, for the occasional exhibit, I have heard that they've done loans. Yeah, we haven't had any requests lately. Yeah. Well, they do have a special branch within FedEx, that's their FedEx art handling. Yeah, so they, even for other museums, it's more expensive, but they do offer that service. And you can guarantee private control wallets in transit, and extra security and the cards are kind of the gold mine of information, but everything is predominantly on the Proficio rediscovery database, except for the downstairs library is still in an Excel spreadsheet. It's been initially inventoried, but it hasn't been transferred into Proficio yet. But the other two libraries are in Proficio, and they do, they're in the process right now of importing all the MARC records to make sure that we're in that format.
We've been through so many different systems and levels of expertise on the part of the people on the committee that we're just now trying to get it all standardized, and it's been a challenge.
Diane and behind her are our two co-chairs this year of the committee. So I swear they're both here about 16 to 20 hours a week. Well, our next room to visit, if you take a peek into one of the original bathrooms as we swing through the room, you can see the tea room for the committee.
Who are those adorable little girls in the picture there?
Those are the Roth daughters. When they moved in here, yeah, they're twins. They were the second family to purchase Filoli in 1937. And when they moved in, they were 16. Their brother was 19. Their mother was Lurleen Matson Roth of the Matson Navigation Company, and she was heiress to that family fortune. Her and her husband purchased Filoli in 1937.
37. Okay. Before that was the Ford family.
Well, the Matson is the Roth, yeah, in 1937. And then in 1975,
Oh, hey, that's one I know. It's nice.
she was really looking for a way to save the garden, to keep it open to the public. And she looked for almost 10 years trying to find a solution to how to keep Filoli intact. And every buyer, that's interested, wouldn't guarantee her that they would keep the gardens open to the public, open for garden clubs and different groups to utilize. And so her son actually recommended the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And so she gifted the house and garden to the National Trust and then the surrounding acreage to Filoli Center. It was a nonprofit created for that purpose to co-steward the estate with the National Trust. Because there's only two properties that are west of Mississippi in the National Trust, us and then the Adobe in Monterey. And we don't know what to do with the West Coast property. We don't have a structure out there to really handle that. And so we were the first co-steward site. And now half of their 27 sites are a co-steward relationship. So it's become a very good working model.
It's funny because when I mention Filoli, people always ask about being on TV. They ask about Dynasty and it's called Heaven Sent or something.
Heaven Can Wait.
Heaven Can Wait. And so it sounds like it's a little bit elevated from the entertainment industry these days.
Well, initially the house was empty for about 2 years because she endowed the property when she gave the gift. That was part of the agreement. And part of the money that came to endow the property came from selling all of the furniture in the house. She kept some pieces for family, but the rest of the furniture was sold. And they had purchased the house fully furnished from the Bournes estate. And so, unlike a lot of houses where you've had a lot of turnover, for all that time, the house changed relatively little. The wallpaper in the reception room that we walked through was laid in 1917 and has just been conserved this last January, but it's in incredible condition. And other than some modifications to make things more efficient in the kitchen in the 1960s, she made very few changes. You know,
looks like 1960s or 70s.
well, these are original bathrooms, yeah, to the 1917. But you'll see downstairs when you do your house tour later the teal and the yellow golden rod in the kitchen kind of scream of that era. But she was an incredible steward in the garden. She cared for the garden, she added to the garden, but she used the same garden designers, so there was a continuity through. So she embellished the garden, but didn't do major renovations and major changes. So we ended up with an estate that hasn't really changed a whole lot as we come up on our 100th birthday. Well, let's go to the Friends Library next. Major retrofit. Yeah.
Just did pretty well in Mama Creator.
You can straddle the San Andreas Fault in the backyard. We actually have the fault is about
That was my next question.
200 yards that way,
Really?
and we have a bridge where you can stand on either tectonic plates.
Just answered my next
But
question.
sometimes when you're right up against it, you know, you're so close to it, you'd be amazed that you don't have more damage. But
Huh.
we were very fortunate.
That's quick.
Well, again, this is the Friends Library, and this is our circulating collection. Again, it's related to garden planting, garden design, botanical illustration, also things that relate to the more than 200 classes a year that we host. I think we have more classes than some junior colleges. But like just today, we have a stitcher class at the end of the hall on needlepoint. There's a kids learning a year in the garden happening in the visitor center. And there's two other classes. One is a nature education class, and the fourth one is going to escape me right now. But we've had botanical illustration earlier this week. You can actually do a certificate of botanical illustration through Filoli. We're really trying to bring that art form back into vogue, and I think they're hanging on Monday. Our annual botanical art illustration exhibit will be hung in the visitor center, which is always a feast for the eyes. So we have, because of our collections of botanical art, we've really tried to amp up that art form, and we have incredible teachers who come from all over the world to teach those classes. And it's just continuing. We've then started in 2000 our own Filoli Florilegium. So right now we have 25 original watercolors in that collection of plants that are featured in our garden. So it's just something that we're really focused on. It's such a good fit for us educationally as well. But here we have a variety of books that cover all of those different topics that we teach classes on, as well as our own Filoli Productions DVD and video library. One of our volunteers, Bob Mitchell, is a retired TV producer, and he films and produces all of our lectures and talks. And they're an incredible resource for our volunteers. They're an incredible resource for staff. I'm able to, listen in on our past curators' lectures for the last 10 years and really capture a lot of Tom's knowledge, which is, a great resource for us. A retired horticulture manager, our director of horticulture, Lucy Colmack, retired last year, but, generations of her talks are still available. We then also have some books over here in the corner that focus on California history, and specifically the history as it relates to our two families. The Bournes are incredibly well known, not only for the gold mine, but also for his connections with San Francisco in the water and the gas companies. One of his companies, shortly after he sold it, would become Pacific Gas and Electric. The other today is San Francisco Water Company, as I mentioned earlier. So in the area, they're a well-known family. They used to say that everything the Bournes touched turned to gold for the gold mine connection. And of course, then the Matsons were originally headquartered out of San Francisco. They're now headquartered out of Oakland. And the Matson Navigation Company, so many people in this area took white line cruises to Hawaii and Tahiti, and their family really developed that tourism route and developed the initial hotels in Hawaii that today are a part of the Sheraton Group. So they have another well-known local connection. And am I forgetting anything about the Friends Library?
You're doing good.
Well, does anybody have any questions?
This was a bedroom too?
This was originally one of the Jack and Jill suites. So you have the day nursery on this side, and then the night nursery is my office next door. And they share the Jack and Jill bath and dressing room. And then during the Roth era, the twin girls used this as their sitting room in their bedroom. And you'd think with 9 bedrooms that they would take separate rooms, but they were inseparable and chose to share this space. Yeah.
I'm wondering about this book up here. It looks like it's folded paper.
It's an accordion style mount, so they actually open like that.
A number of Japanese books are done that way.
Oh.
And then it all slips into that sleeve on the far left.
It's very book-like. Does Filoli publish books on the floor of fauna? No?
We haven't. They've talked about maybe when they hit a certain number in the Flora Legion that they would do a special release, much like High Growth did. Only so many copies are made. But since we're still only at 25, it's still a little ways out. We usually have 1, maybe 2 added a year.
Okay.
You'll see them downstairs when you're on display in the trophy room right now. 5 of them are up.
Okay.
They're beautiful. They really are.
Are there books that show the home as it was originally furnished? And
Yes. Let's see, the peninsula is there.
It should be over in that section, Julie.
if this house could talk, or
No, it's Homes of the Peninsula. It's a very popular book, as you can imagine, with the doses.
Let's go that way.
Yeah, when you get over
San
there,
Francisco
you recognize
photographer
the
Gabriel Milan
Unfortunately, it's true.
was really well known for photographing estates on the peninsula. He did both of the Bourne's house here and their home on Webster Street in San Francisco. And then he later came back and photographed Mrs. Roth. So that's Mrs. Roth and one of her award-winning horses. Before buying Filoli in 1937, her and her husband had a second property here in Woodside, the Waiwuri Farm. And that was where she had her stables. She was an internationally recognized horsewoman and had, especially for Hackney ponies and Hackney horses before the war. But one of her stallions retired because he had won every award he could. Both nationally and internationally. You'll see statues of him downstairs. But they have throughout here.
The stallion.
She had. Why am I going to forget his name?
the horse name?
Who?
The
horse?
Yeah, her
Chief of Longview.
Chief of Longview. Thank you, Anne. We have a bronze of him downstairs. Come on. There we go. So downstairs on your tour, you'll see there's also photo boards kind of throughout the house that we have in each room, because so many of our visitors are self-guided that we've done photos of the rooms both in the Bourne period and in the Roth period to show how little things changed, and then in some rooms how much things changed. But with the furniture staying, The Roths, of course, added a number of pieces of furniture when they came from Why Worry, but you kind of watch it like magical. You know, this piece is currently on display in the library. You know, you just watch the musical furniture as things shift around. When she passed away in 1985, Mrs. Roth did leave Filoli about 66 pieces that she felt should come home. So we're fortunate that rooms like the dining room are true time capsules of both periods, and other pieces that are spread throughout the house. The Bourne family has also, their descendants have gifted back a number of pieces. So we're lucky to have family portraits and things like that for both families. This is Sterling. When it was Agnes Bourne's sitting room, that was her office of sorts. And you can see the patio that used to lead out was a wrought iron patio that stretched out of one of those windows. Unfortunately, it had to be removed.
Is this kind of the original color scheme, or is this a later color scheme?
This one could be a later color, but the original colors of the house have been kept wherever possible.
Back
But
then,
yeah, it's...
the reason I'm asking,
throughout-
back then houses tended to be very dark, you know, in the 1800s.
Yeah, we have had to increase the lighting in some rooms, like this room, but there was a lot more lamps and things like that.
Oh, I
that
meant,
were also
I meant
being
dark,
used.
meaning color, even the color palette. That's why I'm asking, is this a later color scheme?
The kind of the putty color out in the hallway was in a lot of rooms, quite a lot.
And where was the original library?
The one that you'll see downstairs on your house tour was the only original library in the house, and it's based on an English library just outside of London, Denham Place. They basically leased the rights to copy their library when the family needed some extra funds. So our library is actually a little bit larger, but it is bizarre when you look at pictures of Denham Place and you're like, yeah, that's our room. No, that's not the right fireplace. You know, like there's little tiny subtle changes. But they did a beautiful job. You see all the intricate carving work and everything like that. Well, do you want a few minutes to peruse titles before a house tour? How are we doing on time?
I was curious about the videos. Did they have any connection with the house?
The videos are all movies that have featured Filoli.
George the Jungle.
Out front on the driveway, they have the large banquet. This is the home he comes home to.
And in the ballroom, some scene in the ballroom. I've never seen George of the Jungle, so I'm just do all that secondhand.
When the house was empty initially, they weren't, you know, the primary focus was really on the garden. But people were so curious about the house that Mrs. Roth was complaining in the early 80s, they have to wash the windows more often, there's too many nose prints. And so when Heaven Can Wait decided to film inside the house, they paid for thousands of dollars of renovation work to re-sand and finish floors, to repaint. They brought conservators in to take paint samples to make sure that everything was historically accurate. They did a lot of work in the house. And it was that funding from the movies that allowed us to open the house after that as a historic home, not just a garden. And so very quickly, by 1978, when they had finished filming, Mrs. Roth had arranged with the San Francisco Fine Arts Museums the loan of furniture. And so then the Getty loaned furniture as well, and they were able to really show the house more as a home, but as she said, not really the right home. You know, it looked to have a lot of French gilt furniture when her house had been full of 17th and 18th century English and Irish furniture. But with her gift of 20 pieces towards the end of her life and then another 66 at the time of her death, we were able to flesh out the house a little bit more. And then in 1998, a Los Angeles collector, Melville Martin, donated his entire collection of furniture and decorative arts, paintings, everything to Filoli. It's more than 850 pieces.
Wow.
And his collection was a perfect fit for the house because it was predominantly 17th and 18th century English and Irish antiques. And all of those little decorative objects were so similar to what the families had been collecting that it really allows us to show the home as it appeared. And our last curator, Tom Rogers, he told me the best thing I heard was the Roth daughters were in the living room downstairs in the reception room. They were standing there and they were whispering to each other, "It looks like it used to." You know, and for somebody who sets up historic homes, there's no better compliment. You know? So it was a perfect fit for us, and it really allows the house downstairs to be a home again in the way that it's displayed.
And the Joy Luck Club? There was a scene
Unfortunately,
here?
the baby was drowned in our house. One of the adjoining bedrooms.
Oh my God.
You never know what they're gonna want to use. You know, beautiful trim work and everything
Oh
is
my God.
detail
The
for.
bathtub. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess it's not easy to find one that old.
But you know, we just last year they used for the master that came out. They weren't in the house at all.
Oh.
They were out on the back lane. They wanted it to look like an English country road. I haven't seen it yet to see how recognizable it is. But we've had just a number of different projects that have been in the house, in the garden, or in the garden, only the house. The game with Michael Douglas was another major project in the house. I mean, they were shooting for months. And they shot all throughout the house, you know, covered whole walls in graffiti with fake skin up to protect our walls, and you know, but they did major work to restore the kitchens. So when you tour the kitchen downstairs, you'll see that it looks very much like it did in 1917, where the adjoining butler's pantry is still very teal, you know, and shows that later era. So whenever the movies have come through, they've been very generous. Which has allowed us to do things that we may not have been able to do on the same time scale. We just had JCPenney did their Academy Awards. They're minute long. One, if you see that online, the entire minute is all filmed here at Filoli. They were in the garden, they were in the dining room, they were in the ballroom, they were in the garden house, they were playing in the sunken garden, they were up in trees in the terrace. You know, they were kind of everywhere. In the library. Sitting in a chair they were not supposed to sit in. That's all the collection manager saw out of the whole minute, right? Was, when did she sit in the chair? But we have a lot of photo shoots that are kind of constantly ongoing. They're an excellent fundraising opportunity for us, but also an opportunity for us to share the house and the estate with people all over the country.
Cool. So do you close the house off to the public then when there are those kinds of projects?
It depends. We haven't had a major movie that's filmed in the house, mainly because of our schedule. Our event schedule now is almost an event every month that we're open, February through October. And so movies have to work around our existing event schedule, which has made it much trickier because something like the game that was 4 months is getting harder to schedule. But at the same point, for the right project that would be a good fit, they have closed the house or part of the garden for a time in the past. We wouldn't have, you know, things like carpet down the main hall and things if the game hadn't purchased it. You know, I mean, sometimes you have to weigh the conservation needs, and they usually do an incredible job. I was listening to the Hort staff talk the other day about when they were filming the game, they were only shooting at night, but they wanted it to look like daytime, so they had like massive lights on this side of the house, which of course the plants were deeply confused as to what was happening. They had to build an exterior structure along the outside of the house to air condition the wisteria and block them out from the lights, because these are wisteria that are this thick around, and we weren't going to take an chance that they would be harmed in this. And so they were happy to do it. They built out whole structures and air conditioned and blocked light, and just so that they could get their shot.
Wow.
But a lot of it happens when we're closed. We generally close in late October. We then don't reopen till mid-February. The only time that we're open in that whole part of the season is for the 12 days for holiday traditions, which always starts Black Friday. And they turn the entire downstairs into a holiday shopping boutique. 16-foot trees and over-the-top splendor. And it's one of our largest fundraisers of the year.
Yeah.
All of the collection furniture, all of the art comes upstairs for storage, which you can imagine is what keeps me busy 3 months out of the year. All the books in the downstairs library get stowed, and everybody goes right back to their shelf. It's
Oh,
It's a big
It's a lot of
process.
Wow.
So by February, you come up and everybody's like, we're open for the season, and we're like, we're exhausted. You know, when's the quiet time?
Is there an elevator in the building?
There is one 1921 Otis manned elevator. It needs between $75,000 to $100,000 worth of work to bring it up to current safety code. I keep hoping one of us will win the lottery.
But
Because
so all the furniture has to be moved
All
upstairs.
Yeah.
14 art movers
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
come in and I act like a runway director, like this one's going there, end of hall, and then Anne's on a walkie-talkie upstairs saying she wants it at the end on the left. You know, and it's just a whole dance. We've had one art mover who's done it now 30 times. So before you even pick up a piece, he usually knows where it's heading. But it's a big ordeal to bring everything upstairs. I wish that we could fix the elevator, but
Maybe
sometimes
you need
want-
to do a Kickstarter.
Yeah, exactly, something.
Or get a movie that needs an elevator.
Yes. Well, we want to give you some time, you know, to peruse a little bit. We're looking at, it's about 11:30 now. Do you think 10 or 15 minutes to kind of peruse through? If anybody would rather sit and read or explore while they're doing the house tour, you're welcome to do that as well.